Welcome to Ethical Point, the ultimate explainer for all you UPSC aspirants out there. Today, we're tackling the invisible forces that truly govern administration. We're moving way past the rulebooks to look at the psychology of a public servant. We are talking interpersonal skills, attitude, and emotional intelligence. Now, I want you to put on your skeptic's hat for a second. You're probably thinking, look, we spend thousands of hours memorizing laws, economic policies, history. Isn't textbook knowledge enough to be a great civil servant? Well, let's dive into this, because the short answer is absolutely not. No way. You could know every single law in the book, but if you can't handle a protesting crowd or persuade a grieving community, you fail. Your personality and interpersonal skills are the actual engines of effective governance.
Here is our roadmap for today's explainer mapped directly to your GS Paper 4 syllabus. We're going to cover the Civil Servants Toolkit, decode attitude and behavior, explore persuasion, break down moral and political attitudes, look at emotional intelligence in action, and finally, translate all of this into a high-scoring mains answer strategy.
All right, starting right off with Section 1, the Civil Servants Toolkit.
When an officer steps into a district, what exactly are these external skills they need to survive and thrive? At the core, we have interpersonal skills. The standard definition is simply the skills a person uses while interacting and communicating with people. They're vital for inspiring others and navigating crises. But what does this actually look like on the ground when the heat is on?
Well, the source text gives us a highly realistic dilemma. Picture this: villagers, furious over a lack of water supply, have actually captured department officials and blocked the highways. It's a classic law and order nightmare, right? To peacefully resolve it, you need a whole toolkit. You need active listening to hear their grievances, nonverbal communication to show you aren't a threat, negotiation to release those officials, problem-solving to fix the actual water issue, and assertiveness to finally clear that highway.
Moving right along to Section 2, decoding attitude and behavior.
That covers the external skills, but let's pivot the debate here. How exactly is a civil servant's inner mindset formed? That brings us to attitude. It's essentially a social creation, a predisposition of the mind to respond to people or events in a settled way. And this ties perfectly into the principle of consistency. We are deeply conditioned to be consistent. For example, if you have a positive attitude towards someone you like, you'll naturally tend to overlook their mistakes. Our minds literally crave that internal harmony.
This brilliantly illustrates Albert Ellis's ABC model. Attitude isn't just one thing. It's affective, behavioral, and cognitive. Let's translate that into layman's terms using the text examples. The cognitive part is your belief, like knowing snakes in your region are poisonous. The affective part is the feeling, that sheer terror you get when you see a dog that once bit you. And the behavioral part? That's the action. It's actively crossing the street to avoid that dog.
Now, don't confuse this with aptitude. Aptitude is your raw, inborn ability, like your IQ. Attitude is the mindset needed to actually use that aptitude. Think of older folks and smartphones. They absolutely have the mental aptitude to use them, but often lack the attitude or the willingness to experiment. And this is a massive lesson for the bureaucracy. You can have the aptitude to crack the UPSC, but if you lack a service attitude, you'll remain completely disengaged from the society you're supposed to serve.
But wait, here's a challenge for you. Do people always act according to their internal attitude? Great question, and the answer is actually no. We know this from Richard Lapierre's famous 1934 study. He surveyed over 200 American hotels, and 92% explicitly stated they had a negative attitude and would absolutely not serve Chinese guests. Yet, when Lapierre actually showed up with a Chinese couple, almost every single hotel served them. Outward behavior often contradicts internal attitude just to avoid conflict.
Let's jump over to Section 3, persuasion and social influence.
If attitudes are this complex and hidden, how does a civil servant actively change them? Let's anchor this with a quote from Aristotle. Persuasion is clearly a sort of demonstration, since we are most fully persuaded when we consider a thing to have been demonstrated. Take a mental screenshot of that, folks. It is a perfect introduction hook for any exam essay you face on persuasion. So how do we build this into a practical toolkit? Persuasion requires 4 steps: establishing credibility, finding common ground, providing vivid evidence, and connecting emotionally. Imagine a district collector trying to persuade villagers to give up land for a new solar project. First, they establish credibility by having a track record of honesty. Then they find common ground. Everyone wants 24/7 electricity, right? They provide vivid evidence, maybe taking them to a successful neighboring solar village. Finally, they connect emotionally, talking about a better future for their children.
Spot on. But beyond one-on-one persuasion, administrators must master social influence, the sum of surroundings that affect behavior.
According to psychologist Herbert Kellman, this comes in 3 varieties: compliance, where you just agree outwardly; identification, where you follow someone you respect; and internalization, where you deeply accept the belief privately and publicly.
And a massive part of social influence is social proof, popularized by Robert Cialdini. Honestly, UPSC aspirants suffer from this terribly. We blindly buy whatever study materials supposed experts or toppers recommend, simply because we're in an uncertain situation and assume the crowd knows better. That is the ultimate social proof. Whether it's expert opinions, the wisdom of the crowd, or an FSAI certification on your food, social proof is a powerful shortcut for human decision-making.
Okay. Section 4, Moral and Political Attitudes. Let's steer the conversation toward 2 vital attitudes that dictate governance. Moral attitudes guide our ethics. They're built on 5 foundations: reverence, faithfulness, awareness of responsibility, veracity, and goodness. Awareness of responsibility is a huge one. The text uses a really powerful scenario. A district collector facing farmer suicides due to drought. A morally unconscious officer just does lip service. A partially conscious one clears immediate debts. But a fully morally responsible officer tackles the depths, the harvest issues, and the long-term environmental hardships holistically. While moral attitudes guide ethics, political attitudes guide our public life ideology. They range across a spectrum, from radicals seeking profound, immediate change to reactionaries wanting to revert to a former status quo. Neutrally speaking, what's totally fascinating today is how traditional shapers like family and age are being overwhelmed by modern media algorithms and money, which actively manipulate these political attitudes for engagement. On to Section 5, Emotional Intelligence in Action.
We've covered the mind and the social environment. Now for the absolute peak of the executive toolkit. How does a civil servant keep their cool under immense pressure? By mastering their inner state. The Bhagavad Gita actually gives us one of the earliest recorded definitions of emotional intelligence. O leader of man, that enlightened one who is unperturbed alike in pleasure and pain, he is indeed worthy of immortality. Listeners, take note. Using this ancient text to frame EI is an absolute goldmine for a high-scoring GS Paper 4 answer.
In modern academia, Daniel Goleman popularized the mixed model of emotional intelligence, breaking it into 5 core components: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. To summarize that in layman's terms, it's recognizing your own feelings, keeping those feelings under control, staying incredibly patient when things go wrong, accurately sensing the frustrations of the public, and finally, using social skills to build actual solutions.
Finally, Section 6, UPSC Mains Answer Writing. Let's break the fourth wall here for our UPSC-focused listeners. All this theory is fantastic, but how do we translate this into a high-scoring strategy? If you get a 15-marker administrative dilemma question, you can string these exact steps together to form a perfect way-forward conclusion. Step 1. State that as an administrator, you will use EI to depersonalize yourself from the public's immediate anger. Step 2. Use problem-solving to handle conflicts constructively. Step 3. Use social skills to maintain cordial relations with all stakeholders. And Step 4. Empathize with the vulnerable and unite the administration as a team.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. I want to leave you with this final provocative practice prompt directly from the Sources question bank. Awareness of responsibility is the key to success. How will you apply this in your administrative career? Test your new knowledge with that prompt. Think about how attitude, persuasion, and emotional intelligence all blend together to create a true public servant. Thank you for joining us on Ethical Point. Keep learning, stay structured, and I'll see you in the next explainer.